A young adult woman and man had been dating for some time. One evening, the young man called up his sweetheart and asked her to go on a ride with him. He said he had something very special to share with her. He picked her up in his beloved convertible antique car and drove out to the park for a picnic. The young man seemed somewhat distracted and nervous. The young woman was waiting to hear all night what her boyfriend's special news was. After the picnic, the couple drove around the park looking at the stars. He was trying to figure out how to express to her how special this moment was. Then he suddenly stopped the car, smiled, and said, "There, it's happened. My car just reached the 100,000-mile mark, and she's still beautiful. Now the speedometer starts all over again. Everything is back to zero." The young woman, filled with disappointment, could only think to herself, "Yes, you're right. Everything is back to zero." She was hoping and expecting that young man's lifelong commitment to her. We all have expectations, and sometimes they are dashed. We have many expectations of marriage, of priesthood, of our friends, of our family, of our job, our boss, our kids. The list goes on and on and on. How have your expectations been met? I can share with you, with only 3 years and a half of being ordained a priest, my expectations of the priesthood is what I expected and much, much more. For the honor and privilege to share with the faithful, God's people, with you in times of great joy and baptism of your children. Walking in as a stranger, but because of this priestly office, I am welcomed. Sharing the joys of your families when we gather in the union of two families in the sacrament of marriage. Walking with you when you are grieving the loss of a loved one, and assuring you that Christ is truly with us. And it is because that we have a King that's lavishly generous, that continues to keep me and my priesthood in awe. It is this awe that carries me through when this office is challenged, is belittled, it's attacked. Today's feast has Christ as King, and this begs the question, what expectation does that bring? Christ as warrior? Christ living in luxury, freedom, with authority? Are our expectations of Christ lost? Christ the King didn't achieve his freedom through the blood of his enemies, but through his own blood. This King of ours didn't ride in on a warrior horse, but on a donkey, which is a sign of humility and peace. This King of ours vested in splendor, not with a crown of jewels, but a crown of thorns. What are our expectations of Christ as our Lord and King? Expectations maybe as a cradle Catholic to simply close another liturgical year and look back at it? Or expectations as an RCIA candidate in catechumen, yearning and discerning God's will and joining our community? Christ is truly present with us in his word, in his body, and his blood. present before us today as he was before Pilate 2,000 years ago. Jesus says, "You say that I am a king." If Christ isn't fully fulfilling your expectations, I promise you 100% guaranteed, it isn't because Jesus is no longer reigning. Rather, I propose to you, it's because our mind and thus our soul has Jesus pictured on the wrong horse or wearing the wrong crown. Christ yearns. He yearns to and will fulfill our expectations. If only we recognize in him, only we recognize him for who he is, the one who laid down his life to show us greater love. For he tells us that there is no greater love than self-giving love. When we allow Christ to meet our expectations, we are allowing him to reign as Lord of our lives. This means that we turn to him who is the fount of all that is good, to guide, nourish, and strengthen us. For when Christ the King reigns in our lives, we have life within us. We are recharged. The darkness of sin is dispersed, and we are filled with saving grace. We turn to him, our King, with complete trust, acknowledging that he is our Creator God, who knows all our needs, who knows what is best for us. It is with this trust that we allow Christ to reign in all aspects of our life. Simply put, in the words of St. Paul, it is no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives in me.